Hello everyone, Peter Smith here. I'm back from Ulverston. Had a great week down with my friends, George and Jan, in Ulverston. Did a lot of hard work clearing a huge overgrown garden down there, and I had the best week's sleep I've had for ages. And reminded me of a saying in the Bible, sweet is the sleep of the labourer. And I did a lot of good labouring down there. But I want to talk to you today about a very topical issue. There's always people complaining about this. Now, people have also complained about the quality of the sound, and I've got a flash new microphone here that I'm trying out, so I hope the sound is a little bit better. Now, I want to talk about the gender pay gap or the gender wage gap. Now, as some of you may know, I come from Australia and grew up on a big farm, apple orchard. Grew lots of apples. Used to export 50,000 cases of apples a year to Britain a long time ago, before the European Economic Community and all that jazz. And I used to pick a lot of apples. Now, about 50 years ago, there was equal pay for apple pickers in Tasmania. You might think, that's a good thing. Well, is it really? Was it really? You see, was it really equal work for equal pay? Now, when you're picking apples in Tasmania, we had these huge A-frame ladders you had to climb up to get to the apples. And you had an apple picking bag where you could hold 40 pounds of apples. So the system was you'd climb right up to the top of the ladder with an empty apple bag and pick the apples and work your way down this huge great ladder that was about 7 feet high, and then you'd fill up the top of the apple bag by just standing on the ground and getting a little bit of fruit you could reach from the ground. Now, the ladies were also meant to use the ladders, but most of them only went up 1 or 2 steps instead of 6 or 7, and mostly picked all the apples on the ground, so you had no apples to pick to just fill up the top of your bag before you took them to the big bin where you sort of deposited them. So that was my first experience of equal pay for men and women when it wasn't equal work. But anyway, that's a long time ago, 50 years ago, about 50 years ago. And I picked lots of apples. I had a very strong back from holding that 40 pound of apples. Now, some of you might know I have an engineering degree. Engineering degrees are hard work. Now, one reason women don't get paid as much as men, because through their own choices, they pick occupations that don't pay so much. And men pick the occupations that pay a lot more quite often. Now, when I did my engineering degree, I started in 1968 and finished in 1972 at the University of Tasmania. It was hard course, that degree. Took a lot of hard work. And when I was in my final year, there were 200 undergraduates at that university, and everything was done to get more ladies to study engineering. So with 200 undergraduates, guess how many ladies were there? One Scandinavian lady. That was it. Now, move up to more recent times, and one of my own daughters, when she was 17, didn't know what to do, and she was good at maths and science. I'm good at maths. My mother was good at maths. Both my daughters have been good at maths. So we said to her, why don't you do engineering? So she decided to go to Glasgow Uni and do civil engineering and architecture. And I thought, wow, this is great. She got a scholarship with Lang O'Rourke, basically guaranteed a job when she finished. They bent over backwards for her. There was absolutely no discrimination there whatsoever. See, these radical feminists think it's all to do with discrimination from the awful, nasty men, the oppressive male patriarchy. Well, I've been searching around for that oppressive male patriarchy, especially the white one, and there's not that much of it about. I can hardly find any of it about anywhere. But anyway, so first summer, she works on a building site up in Glasgow. And I went up there once to see her, and there were a couple of young office girls there, and they worshipped the ground that my daughter stepped on, because here was a young lady training to be an engineer. She was their heroine. And my daughter was good at doing the stuff she did. They had a system of measuring the level of the floor of this. It was about a 12-storey reinforced concrete building they were doing up in Glasgow. She was good at it. She was good at it. And then in the second year, she worked in the design office. And then you know what? She didn't like the building site work. She didn't like the design office work. So she packed it in, because she didn't like it. And most women don't like engineering sort of jobs and technical jobs. They like working with people normally. So it depends what sort of work you want to do. That makes a huge effect on how much money you earn. Now, the other thing is about what kind of work, whether it's hazardous. Now, something you'll never hear the ladies talk about is equality for workplace deaths. At the moment in the UK and the US, I think it's 93%. 93% of workplace deaths and injuries are to men. And if you're working in a job where there's a high rate of death or injury, you usually get paid a bit more, because not everyone wants to do it. Underground coal mining, deep sea fishing, oil rigs. Now, I'm not sure if I told you, but I worked for Caterpillar Tractor Company when I first graduated. I was a service training instructor. And one day I remember my boss saying to me, Peter, now just go straight back home and get all your gear and have enough clothes and stuff for at least a week, and get all your stuff together. There's some governor instability problems on an oil rig up in the Timor Sea. Some D399s are about 1,000 horsepower Caterpillar engines with this electronic governor system. They're not working like they should be, and you're not to come back until it's fixed. So I went straight home, packed my gear out to Tullamarine Airport, flew up to Darwin in the top of the Northern Territory. That took all day. And then the next day I was got up early. Used to drink back then and gamble, and I had a pretty sore head because I was out most of the night playing poker with the cat serviceman up in Darwin, and there was some pretty heavy drinking up there. But I gave that up a long time ago. But that was I was about 24 then, 24 or 25, 24 I think it was then. And we got out the airport, and a mighty DC-3 flew us down to this little airstrip at Columbaroo Mission in the top of Western Australia. Amazing machine, the Dakota. Used to drop parachutists off on D-Day in Normandy in 1944, and did a lot of other good stuff around the world. The DC-3, amazing machine. Didn't fly that fast, but she was Incredible old bus we were in. And then we got in a big Sea King helicopter and out to the rig and couldn't find it and had to come back, and came back the next day and eventually got back onto the oil rig. And I fixed the problem in 10 minutes. And they wouldn't let me off for 4 days. Now, got offered a job on that rig at 3 times the salary I was getting in Melbourne. And I was tempted. I thought, ooh, that's good money, you know. But I found out, I didn't take the job. I found out a couple of weeks later, no, a month or two later, someone got killed, standing right where I'd been standing on that oil rig. Wasn't meant to be standing in that spot, but no one told me. So it's dangerous. So if you're going to work out on oil rigs, you know, they pay a lot of money because not everyone wants to go out there and work. Same up here in the North Sea. If you're on the Piper Alpha platform when she went up in flames, it's not a nice way to go. So they pay more money for people to be out there, you know, 2 weeks on, 1 week off, or whatever it is. Not a lot of people want to do that. If you live in Canada, do you want to go up in the frozen north and work in the winter? So you get paid more money for that, but not a lot of women want to do that. Men will do it, but not so many women. That's another reason men get paid more. Or if you're in Australia, you might go working up in the Pilbara, up in the Hamersley iron ore ranges, or Port Kembla, somewhere up around there. It's hot and dusty, and women normally don't like that sort of environment, so the men get paid more. Is this discrimination? I don't think so. Now, the other thing is the wind and the rain and the snow. We talked about that. You know, if you're out in the wind and the rain and the snow and the heat and the dust, the men will take it usually, but the women are not so keen. So the men get paid more. And another thing, height. How many ladies like to work up on the power lines? Very high, a lot of voltage going through there. If they don't turn it off, it's good night. Now, a few years ago, I was going through Glasgow Central train station. I was going preaching somewhere the next day, Saturday night. There was a big gang of people up there doing maintenance on the Glasgow Central train station, because she's a pretty old train station. You know, great big steel girders up there and beams and all sorts of stuff, and they were cleaning it all up and making sure it was tickety-boo. Guess how many women were in the gang? 0. All men. Up high, dirty work. Not everyone wants to do it. Now, a month or two ago, I was had a fellowship lunch at church, and there's a lovely young lady in our church. I won't give her surname, but Sarah. She's a lovely young lady. And she's studying theology at Glasgow Uni. Now, I was sitting next to her at fellowship lunch, and just as a bit of a sort of chatting about different stuff, and I said to her, Sarah, do you like getting dirt under your fingernails? Oh, no, she said. Oh, no, my friends don't either. And I thought, no, they don't. And because the men get dirt under their fingernails, often get paid more. Now, I got a burglar alarm fitted in this house 3 or 4 years ago, and I was talking to the chap that was putting the burglar alarm in, and I said to him, you ever get any ladies want to come and do this sort of work with you? He says, yes, I had someone recently. And I said, I'll give you a trial, see how you go. So she comes along, and the first day they go to this house, and he opens up the trap door and says, down you go. And she says, oh, I can't go down there. There's creepy crawlies and all sorts of stuff down there. And there are spiders and different jaggy things and broken bricks and all sorts of stuff. I got cellulitis going down under this house one day. It's a nasty little spot, that crawl space. And she wouldn't go down the crawl space and run the wires for all the trip switches and different other stuff. So she didn't get the job because she didn't want to go down in the crawl space. And how many women want to work down the coal mines? Probably not many. Probably a lot of men don't like it either, but at least some men will do it. So there again, that's another reason. Another reason that men often get paid more. Nothing to do with discrimination, it's choice. And the other thing is, do you have a job where you can check out at the end of the day and you're not thinking about what's going on at work? I had years of that as a professional engineer, thinking about, did I make the right choice? Is this thing going to blow up, or is that thing going to hurt somebody, or all sorts of things, and some hard jobs, and people get paid more for those kind of jobs. And shifts. See, how many people want to do the afternoon shift or the night shift, working from 11 at night until 7 in the morning? Not a lot of people want to do it. Now, I've got a friend in New York who was I lobbied with at the UN, who was delivery room nurse. And she's flipped. She's just a night person now, because she delivered babies at night. See, when ladies are having babies, the baby can come any time, so you've got to be there 24 hours a day. And she did years and years and years on the night shift. She's an exception, Jean. She's an exception. But mostly women don't want to do the late shift and the night shift. And travel. How many people want to be away from home? Now, last nearly 25 years of my life, I've been away about half the time. I'd be at least 1 week a month at the UN in New York, away. How many women want those sorts of jobs? Not that many. And the other thing, this is a wonderful interview, Jordan Peterson and Kathy Newman from Channel 4. And Jordan Peterson wiped the floor with her. It was unbelievable how good that is. You want to look that up, Jordan Peterson, Kathy Newman. Last time I looked, it was about 11 million views. And I'm amazed Channel 4 put it up there on YouTube. It was a brilliant interview, and they're talking about the gender pay gap. And Kathy Newman's going, there's so much discrimination, and there's only 6 women head of the top 100 FTSE companies in the UK. And Jordan Peterson says, who'd want to have one of those sorts of jobs? You're putting in 70, 80 hours a week, decade after decade. How many people want that? And then he explained an amazing thing. You've got a bell curve for IQ. And men and women, it's the same average. Over here's 100, okay? But the bell curve is broader for men and it's narrower for women, which means you have a very small number of people at the top end of IQ and a small number really low IQ. It's a reasonable number at low IQ as well, you see. And top IQ men usually end up running all these big companies. Some would call them psychopaths. That's a hard word, but that's probably what they would be, some of these people. I've known some of these people. Work, 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 work. That's all they do. I'd only been at Caterpillar about a year when I decided that was not for me. You had to sell your body and soul to the company. But some people are willing to do it, and good on them. Fine. The other end of the IQ scale, they're all the fellas in jail usually. See, we're different. No, I had a chap come into this shop the other day, and he was just trying to think where he was from. Bulgaria, I think. And he'd studied something, and I could tell he was a different sort of Christian to me. And he was going on about equality for men and women. And I said, what about complementarity? What about men and women getting on together with one another? And, no, he was equality. See, with my wife and daughters and my granddaughter, they have abilities I don't have, and qualities I don't have, and vice versa. We're all different. And the feminists of today are never happy. But they really don't want equality. They're after matriarchy. And I've seen this at the UN for many decades. They're really after matriarchy. And they bang on about toxic masculinity. But there's a toxic femininity too. And I believe only 7% of women in Britain claim to be feminist. And there's only a small percentage, that's 7%, that's always banging on about gender pay gap and white male oppression and patriarchal oppression and all this jazz. I've been looking around for all this male patriarchal oppression. I can't find too much. Men get it much tougher than women in many ways. You try and get to see your kids if you're divorced and your wife doesn't want you to see your kids and see who gets everything their own way. It's not the men. And how come? If we're all after equality, why don't we have all these women lining up to do all the dirty and dangerous jobs that the men do? Now you see, people like me wouldn't worry so much about this, except we're always being got at by these feminists who claim all these awful things about us. And really, all we're looking for is a quiet life. We don't want to be harassed about the gender pay gap all the time. And in most families, if a man's earning a really good salary and the wife's just looking after the kids, she's quite happy. I mean, I've asked, I remember when I worked at the motor registry in Hobart, I said to Len Morgan one day, I said, all these young ladies and lots of them have babies. He said, all having to work in the motor registry at the roads and transport. I said, Glenn, how many of these young women would rather just be at home with their babies and little kids? He says, all of them. I think that's true. When women have got young kids, especially before they go to school, they would rather just be with their kids. I've got a niece here. She's got a husband, earns a very good salary, got 3 kids, and she doesn't earn that much, but she's not complaining because her husband can support the lot of them. And a lot of women like that, but not the feminists, because they're wanting equality, so-called. So that's my ramblings on the gender pay gap. I don't think there's all that much discrimination. Now, there's probably some discrimination, but when the women get in charge, do they ever discriminate and just employ the girls? See, there's a question to ask. I remember now, people tend to do these things. These friends I go to see in Tennessee, you've seen some fishing pictures of me out there, I think, and there's one chap I go along and fish in his pond, a lovely pond, and he was in the US Army, and talk to him sometimes. and he was in telecommunications or electronics or something. And he said he ran into this black chap there, African American. He just employed African American people once he got a job where he could employ people. And that's what a lot of people tend to do. But men are really normally just looking for who's the best person to employ. So if you've got a company, a business, why are you there? There to make money, to make a profit. It's not a dirty word. It's how the whole place runs. Now, gender pay gap is meant to be 17% in the UK, 15% in Australia. Now, is equal pay for equal work? Well, or work of equal value or something. There's some sort of fudge words there. But if all the women were getting paid less, and you're there to make money, why wouldn't people just employ all women if they're all getting less? But they don't, because the system doesn't work like that. People get employed in normal companies and organisations because they can help make a profit. And these big companies don't just employ people on a whim with these big salaries. They employ them because they're meant to be able to turn a lot bigger profit. See, if you're in charge of a really, really big organisation, and you can ramp up the profit many tens of millions of pounds or dollars or whatever, you get paid a lot of money. And if you can't make them more money, you will not have a job. That's how it works. Now, in government jobs, well, it's a different system. And there's unions pressure people into doing all sorts of different stuff, and there's all this affirmative action, discrimination against men normally, and that kind of stuff. I don't like affirmative action. I think everyone should be given equal opportunity. Equal opportunity is fine, but equal outcome, that's Marxism. And the only way you achieve equal outcome is by the deaths of tens of millions of people, as we saw in communist Russia, communist China, communist Vietnam, communist Cambodia, and communist Venezuela now. And now they're just starving to death over there. I just saw, sorry to get a little sidetracked, but there was a BBC little thing on Venezuela, and everyone's fleeing the country as much as they can because they're starving to death. They never say it's communist. That's the problem. It's gone communist. It doesn't work. Starvation, death and torture. That's what you get with communists when they try and enforce equal outcome. Not a good system. Equal opportunity? Absolutely, I agree. Everyone should get to the interview. But you employ the best person. I've employed lots of people. You employ the person you think is going to do the best job and help the company run the best and turn a profit. And that's how things work. So thank you very much for listening. And I hope this new, I've got a blue something here, speaker, I hope the sound's a lot better. And thanks for watching. God bless.